LinkedIn. I am R. Adam Smith, creator of this Audiocast series, and I want to thank you to our live audience today and for those listening in the future. And of course, I am pleased to host David Burley, who is an esteemed family enterprise expert and also a trustee and an acclaimed author. It's great to have you on today, David.
Well, Adam, thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Great. So we're going to talk about you and then we'll jump right in. So you are in the Midwest and you are a professional there from the Midwest as well. And you're also an author and an esteemed family enterprise advisor. You have decades of experience in various areas in the industry, including the intersection of law, fiduciary responsibility, and family enterprise. And I see you're also a trusted advisor to families navigating governance and ownership as well. And then our favorite topic here, legacy. As a family trust attorney and fiduciary, David specializes in helping clients manage the legal and relational dynamics of owning and stewarding significant assets, whether they be trust or partnerships or LLCs and various different types of structures, particularly in the preparation and the inflection point of significant transactions. And over the course of his career, he has helped clients protect and develop over $1 billion of assets. And he's also an author. He wrote Take Ownership of What You Own, which is a groundbreaking guide that demystifies trust management for beneficiaries and trustees alike. And he's also the only professional in the Midwest to hold the advanced certificate in family enterprise advising from STEP. He is also recognized for his clarity, independence, and ability to help families turn complexity into confidence. So I think that covers a lot of different skills and topics and interests, David. It's great to have you here today. I hope we can continue the dialogue offline, and it's great to have such an expert on the show as we do regularly every 2 weeks. So great to have you here today. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your firm, and then we'll jump in to conversation.
Thank you. My firm is we'll call it sort of a boutique private client law firm. There's actually two businesses. That's the first. And it's in Cincinnati. It's called BHMK Law. And the work of the firm is, the typical sort of private client legal work that you would see. A lot of trust work, a lot of estate planning, corporate, some real estate, some charitable giving, and of course, occasionally some dispute resolution. The other business is called the Family Enterprise Office, and it is, I think of it as sort of a multifamily office without the investment management component. So we don't manage any money, we don't place any money, but we have considerable interaction on any number of other things. And the asset range may run from, say, tens of millions into the hundreds of millions. Just depends on what's going on. And it's pretty unusual because it is what I would call an advisory firm that has a significant governance component to it, but is also really heavily focused on trusts. You mentioned the book, and one of the things I was trying to do in the book is take these two worlds, kind of the family business world where you're dealing with operating companies, and then the world of trust and estate planning, and trying to treat them in one location, because I think that's typically the way clients look at it. I don't, in my experience, see that clients bifurcate those two things. They typically think, well, okay, what do I own? What do I own? And they start there. So that's what I'm trying to do as we help them.
Okay, thank you for that. Let's jump in here on some topics. So let's focus on family ownership. You talk about helping families take ownership of what they own. So let's unpack that a bit within a larger family enterprise context. Owning, of course, is primarily around an asset, but they also own wealth. They own different types of assets. They also own their legacy. So let's talk a bit about that ownership and what are some of the things that are misunderstood when families are operating across different types of assets. Let's talk about that ownership spectrum.
The first thing I see, believe it or not, is that often families are not sure of everything that they do own. Um, I've been surprised about this, but I find that it's true. Where, particularly if you have some complexity in the nature of the assets, and you have complexity in the family, let's say simply because there are a lot of family members, sometimes not everybody is aware of what is owned. So I would say that's the first thing. But the second is with respect to trusts. Um, a lot of people are not aware that a trust involves split ownership. So there is the legal owner, trustee, and then there are the beneficial owners, the beneficiaries, who, after all, are the reason the trust was set up, because you wouldn't set up a trust if you didn't intend to benefit someone. So I find that the split ownership situation is something that tends to be misunderstood. And so what we try to do is really just unpack that for the client. And I find when we do that, it really helps um, position them so that they can strengthen the trustee beneficiary relationship, which of course is where a lot of problems come up. Um, there are certainly other things, but I find that those are two big ones.
Yep, I agree with that. It makes sense. And you talk about in your book where you make a compelling case that many trustees and beneficiaries don't understand those ownerships, but there's also the legal side and then there's the operational side. So let's say talk about the fiduciary role of the trustee and then also talk about the tracking of the ownership assets for a bit.
It might help to think of it in terms of layers. So let's suppose that you have an operating company that has both individual owners, and then it has, let's say, a couple of trusts that also own part of it. So you have let's say the trust is owning the company. That's one layer. And then another layer is, well, who are the owners of the trust? And so I just mentioned that we're really talking about split ownership. Trustees, the legal owner, beneficiaries, are the beneficial owners. So to your point about fiduciary duty, what that does, those layers tend to put the trustee in the center of uh, multiple sets of duties. So he or she as the trustee, has duties to the beneficiaries and has duties to make sure that the trust is run well and certain things are disclosed and so forth. But then, because the trust is the owner, let's say, of the company in this example, the trustee also has to pay quite a bit of attention to what's going on with the actual operation of the business. And that can get to be pretty complicated. So the trustee has interactions with the beneficiaries. If it's a company that has, for example, a board of directors that's active, then the trustee will have interaction with the board. If it's a family enterprise, which is the world I live in, let's say there is a family member who is the head officer, the CEO, then the trustee has interaction with him or her also. So it's a complicated web, and it's potentially it's asking a lot of the trustee, but that's the way the relationships go.
Right. Um, I know you're focused more on the advisory side. I think, and on the Audiocast, we talk often about the complexities growing for multi-generational families and billionaires and larger family offices. From a technology perspective, I saw a report recently, I think by one of the accounting firms, that 3% in that particular survey are confident in their utilization and slash comfort of technology around their family office. Maybe just share your view on the importance of technology and where you think that's going the next couple of years. and any recommendations you have.
I just came back from a conference that touched on this a little bit. I'm in an outfit called Attorneys for Family Held Enterprises, and we were talking about this last week. You, I think that the bottom line is you need to have technology that fits the type of ownership arrangement you have. And so, if we're talking, for example, about a family office, the first thing we need to understand is what do the family members seek the family office to do? In other words, what type of a family office is it? Because as the saying goes, if you've seen one of them, you've seen one of them. So I think that's the first thing. And now there are companies, of course, that you can hire who will come in and help you figure out what sort of technology do you need based on what type of ownership arrangement you have. And that's definitely something to do. Where I see it going, I think AI is going to be part of it somehow. I'm not a technologist, so I'm hesitant to tell you how that's going to happen. But if you think of it just in terms of kind of process automation, I think there's no doubt that AI will be involved in it. But I think like I say, the first thing is to figure out what type of organizational structure do you have, and what type do you really want? What do you need? And then from there, you go shopping for the technology that's going to fit that.
Right. Yeah, that's helpful. Now, going back as a former lawyer, you started at a law firm out of law school. First, you were in Texas, and for your undergrad, majored in philosophy, which is a wonderful core liberal arts topic. I believe that's continues to be very important in today's next generation of learning. And then you went into a law firm focused on dispute resolution. So talk a bit on like what are the ways that large multi-generational families can avoid disputes rather than go into disputes and resolving them. Just talk a bit about like in some of the war stories and the challenges you've seen. What are some of the ways to best avoid disputes? Particularly around let's say the core generational or asset transfer.
I think the first thing is to make sure that all the key owners are on the same page about why they are owning together. I like to think that we have averted some disputes in families that we have helped because we've started with that question. The basic question is, why do we want to be owners of this, whatever it is, together? Assuming we do, okay? Now, the people I'm dealing with, the answer is almost always, well, yeah, we do want to be together. But that's an initial question: do you want to be together or not? But assuming you do, then I think the question is, well, why do you want to own this together? What are all the advantages that you get from doing that? Not simply that you have access to money, but of course, scale for investing is an obvious one, but being able to take advantage of human capital and intellectual capital in the family is another big one. But I think you have to start with why. Um, there's only been, as I think back, there's only been one family that did not proceed with us on the family enterprise office side. And those people decided to sue each other instead. The fight had to do with whether they were required in a family operating company to have board meetings or not. Believe it or not, that's what they were fighting about. So this case went all the way up to the state Supreme Court, came back down again, and the court said, yes, you do have to have board meetings. Well, okay, well, I mean, they could have done that, if they would simply have, decided to do it, you know? Instead, they were well into the 7 figures in attorney fees, and they were pretty unhappy with themselves, at that point. So I think, the best way to head off the, disputes of the past is to start with the why question and be really, really thorough about it. Uh, I will tell you that, when we start on that path with the clients, typically they are nervous. They're afraid of what's going to unfold. And in almost every case, except that one I mentioned, they have found out that once they start talking about why, they find out that they're actually all more on the same page than they thought they were. They just hadn't really communicated it up to that point, so they didn't know. But they're always relieved. They start out worried and they end up relieved because they have more in common than they thought. They aspire to have a bigger future together than they thought, and it works out pretty well. So that's where I would go.
Mhm. I like that. As a student of Tony Robbins' books and with a life coach, he often emphasizes the why as the most important question in in business and in life. So I think that's important. You also um, in your practice personally and in your life, you have a contemplative approach to your work. So can you talk a bit about that contemplative approach, in advising the client, particularly, let's say, around selling their core asset, their emotional baby, essentially, working with them to prepare emotionally, but also legally around that is a contemplative process. Can you talk a bit about that approach?
Yeah, you had mentioned my background, and I guess as I look back, I guess what I really am is somebody who, when he was a kid, thought he wanted to be a lawyer, and then when he was in college, thought that uh, studying was fun and took a detour because he thought he wanted to be a teacher, and then realized that that really was not what he was cut out to do. So he went back to law school. I mean, that's me. So I guess what that means is when I'm talking to somebody about selling, I try to place whatever the transaction is going to be in a broader context. I have something called the right fit buyer profiler, which sounds sort of hokey maybe a little bit, but what we're trying to do is help the uh, family figure out who really is best to buy this thing. Obviously, there are all kinds of choices, but I was thinking, actually, driving in this morning. I don't think I've ever had a family say our sole consideration is the cash, and that's it. More commonly, it's things like, yeah, we want to max out the sale price, but I don't want them to destroy the culture I've built. I want to make sure that the employees are taken care of. I want to make sure that, for example, they don't move the business out of this place where it's been for 60, 70 years. There are a whole bunch of other considerations that come up. So I try to take those into account. I mean, obviously, there's a bunch of technical stuff that happens, that's in the nature of a sale, but it's not a good idea, in my opinion, to embark on that without thinking through those other questions. Because once you think through the other ones, it actually makes the I think the shopping for the buyer and the negotiating and the papering of the deal go much uh, smoother. It's just a lot more effective because you know what you want. You've thought about it. You
Mhm.
know why you're doing it, and you're able to cruise along. And you're able, if you need to pivot in a negotiation, you're also able to do that pretty quickly because you know you're on top of it.
Right. Yeah, preparation is key, but also the courage to have. communication, to be vulnerable, to lead the clients with their coaches and their board and their consultants, right? To have the courage to be forthright, even though that's difficult, and that can leverage technology, memos, getaway sessions, even psychologists, looking at the sociological side. So I'm sure you've been working alongside other coaches and elite consultants as well, right? To get things organized at the table when things hit the fan.
Your point about courage is excellent, and I'm happy you brought it up because, and I'm not just talking about, you know, courage on my part or on the part of some advisor, but courage for anybody in the family. Because a lot of times, initially, it's not clear what you should do, and you have to kind of, you have multiple options. Particularly if you're dealing with a significant amount of money, you always have options. So there's a question about what's the best way to proceed, and then even after you feel like you have that nailed down, then you you have to have the nerve to go ahead and do it. As I have told any number of people, I am not afraid of anybody in your family, and that doesn't mean I don't respect them or that I'm condescending or anything of that nature. It means that whatever's going on, we're just going to deal with it. It is what it is, and we, as the saying goes, you play the ball where it lies. So you just deal with it, and you go ahead. And that, you are absolutely right. That involves courage.
I I was I was going to start talking about baseball, so you actually just said the word ball, which is fantastic because I'm thinking about what's unique about Cincinnati, which is a charming Midwestern town, similar to mine in St. Louis, and I'd like to talk about that. Um, Sorry for the background noise. I've got some kids coming through the lobby here, but they're really cute. So Chile is a real asset and a real loved uh, characteristic of Cincinnati. And it's also it's made with a compound, which I'm not sure. Since I love chili, I know that it has this capsaicin, which is a compound, and it's all mixed together. And Cincinnati chili, Skyline chili, is very famous. So I do want you to talk about that messy mix. But before we talk about that, let's just all realize that the Cincinnati Reds, which I really disliked coming from St. Louis, had some real players. You guys had Pete Rose, Johnny Bench, George Foster, Ken Griffey, Eric Davis, and others. It really was an impressive, especially in the 80s when we were battling it with the Cardinals. So if you want to give a plug out to Cincinnati and then talk about the messy mix of the compound, which is kind of the chili metaphor.
Well, I think the way the season has gotten out of the gate, it needs a plug because we're going to have more work on our hands than we thought. Uh, I guess I should say, since you brought up St. Louis, that I am actually a Hoosier. And when I was a kid, my grandfather was far more a fan of the Cardinals than he was the Reds. He didn't switch over until we ended up moving here. And of course, the Cardinals have had ownership from Cincinnati for a long, long time. So uh, it, the optimal thing is for us to win. But if for some reason we don't, it would be okay if you did. I hope nobody gets me in trouble for saying that. But anyway, that's what we've got. I was actually out of town for opening day. I was at a conference in Nashville last week. But we're out of the gate, and hopefully things will go well. We have the manager, and we'll see. I'm not going to belabor my Pete Rose stories and my Johnny Bench stories. It's going to take too long, but like a lot of people, I have them. Okay, so you want to know about chili. It sounds to me like we need to send you some Skyline. I know owners of Skyline pretty well. For the listeners from elsewhere, it's chili that is ethnically Greek, and it has some unusual ingredients. It's either Greek or maybe Middle Eastern. Cinnamon, chocolate, some other things that you wouldn't expect to find, and uh, it's one of those deals where some people love it, some people don't care for it. It's in our pantry at home, I can tell you that. There's also one across from my office here. But Adam, it sounds to me like we need to send you some. I'll make sure we do that.
It's also a family business. I mean, it's been in business for 75 years, and it's a good example of the ability of a brand, just like a family office, to be successful in one thing. Um, I'd like you to talk about that for a bit. That singular focus versus a multi-layered focus, and that brings us to the analogy of the single-family office versus multi-family office. But what are you seeing out there about the singular focus on, let's say, one company versus the larger family offices diversifying? I'm seeing a lot more diversification to accommodate and involve the next gen and also diversify risk on the operating side.
Um, I think some of the difference has to do with where in the history of the family you are. People say you make your money on concentrating the risk, not diversifying it. And typically, people who have family offices have them because at some point they doubled down on a market, a technology, a process. I think when you have a significant amount of money because you have done those things, then you necessarily have to shift to think about protection as well as accumulation, and that usually means diversifying. But I talk about this a little bit in the book under the heading of entrepreneurial stewardship. So the idea is that optimally, the family has characteristics of both. Uh, the entrepreneur, and not just the entrepreneur back at the time that the business got off the ground, but entrepreneurship now in 2025 with however many people are in this family. That's a different mindset than being a steward. A steward, to my way of thinking, is somebody who is shepherding something that someone else has created. They're taking care of it. They want to return it in at least as good a shape as they found it, if not better. But that's a different mindset. And so the idea is that you weave these two mindsets together in how you look at everything that you own. And I don't claim that this is easy to do, but I do think that people who are able to do it that they just are far better off than people who are not. Of course, that assumes that you have people in the family who have the capabilities, and if you don't, and you wish to pursue this, then you're going to have to go find the people. But it's not an easy road. But I think when you have both of those things, you really are in a great position.
Right. We've covered this preparation for significant transactions significantly on the Audiocast, especially with Kyle Chapman from St. Louis, Karen Costa, Jim Bennett, Jim Grubman, Brandon Henry, um, Bill Strandberg, and recently this month with SCS Financial with Adrian Penta. So it's a meaningful topic, the preparation for a meaningful transaction because it just covers so many different elements. We'll wrap up soon, but there's this topic of found capital. Recently, we were talking about that within the Audiocast. Do you, finding like discovering the capital, the power you have? Let's say as a large family, it's not just wealth. It's beyond the wealth, right? It's the legacy. It's where that wealth can affect the community. Um, and then there's there's also the element of, the abstract nature of that wealth, especially for next gen, where they might have imposter syndrome, or they might have some guilt, or they're not really ready for that. Just talk about that found capital a bit more.
Yeah, I think this is a really important question because, particularly when you're dealing with assets in a trust, it's easy to feel like, well, hey, I'm not really an owner of this. I mean, I didn't create it. I'm just here. I happen to be a member of this family, and I happen to have shown up in the course of the family's history. But I feel like I didn't quote do anything to bring this about, and so I just kind of found it. That is understandable, but I think it's critical that when people feel that way, that they make a choice to take ownership of their connection to the capital and not just try to avoid it. And I touch on this in the book also, because there is another way of doing it. I mean, you could just say, look, this is great that we have this money, but I'm uncomfortable feeling I'm connected to it. So my solution is I'm just going to ignore it. I'm just going to act like it doesn't exist. I'm not going to tell anybody about it. In my opinion, that is a mistake because you, and I mean anybody who's listening to this audio cast, you have abilities, you have something to add, you have something that you bring to the table. How it gets used is going to depend on, your family, how it's structured, what you own. But you bring things to the table, and uh, you should go ahead and make use of them. I mean, that's why they're there. You're going to be much happier over the course of your life if you do that. And so I just think the solution is to figure out what your unique ability is, be honest about it because it's a good thing, don't hide it, and figure out how to plug it in to the broader landscape of the family and what it owns. I think that's much more effective, much more satisfying, and actually, it's much safer in the sense that it's going to make you and your family better off. It's actually decreasing risk. Uh, you're just going to be better off all the way around if you do that. So I understand that it makes people feel uneasy, but um, back to your prior point about courage, I mean, you have to have a certain amount of nerve to go ahead and dive into it because if you do it in the ways that your guests talk about, each person in the family is going to be better off. It'll actually be really good.
Wonderful. That's great. I'm glad you added that, connecting the dots between the communication, preparation, and again, we've talked a lot about the complexities of preparing for a large transaction, covering like all aspects of a family. That's really what I tend to focus on my career and for clients is besides formation of funds and investing in direct deals and architecture of alts is ultimately the trickiest thing is to prepare thoughtfully and intelligently, covering all the bases when there's a major asset to sell. So we'll just wrap up. Maybe um, that there's a family business that you admire out there that is a large, iconic company that does a great job with their family, their culture, their business. If you would like to maybe think about that and comment on that company, that would be interesting. Um, or just something that you find inspiring, in your day-to-day work. So whichever one you choose.
I think if I pick one, I will leave some out. So I probably better not do that. But I will just tell you somebody I really admire. I'm not going to give the person's name. I don't have authority to do that right now. But this person is a second generation family member uh, connected to a very large real estate portfolio. And getting back to your point about courage, this person is in a pivotal role in this family, not really by choice, but by circumstance. And this person has just done an outstanding job of diving in and doing things that other people in the family are not really situated to do. And it's very impressive. I come across people like this frequently, and I'm always so impressed. You know, they don't make the news. They're not in the business of trying to get publicity. They're just kind of in there doing their job, taking care of things, and it's actually what makes the U.S. economy turn. It's quite something. So I won't say who this person is, but that kind of person, that profile, is someone that I just love to deal with because they are in the business of, well, I hate to say it, they're in the business of taking ownership of what they own, which I think really here is the name of the game. So that's it.
Right. That's a courage and also modesty and determination. So that's great.
Yeah, that's right. All three. All 3.
Mhm. Yeah, I see that in my clients and friends. It's impressive and inspiring. I'd like to thank our Family Business Audiocast attendees today, and of course you, our esteemed guest David Burley. David, thank you for joining today.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, it was really great. Thank you. This is Artem Smith signing off. Stay tuned for the next episode of the Family Business.